Hello, gear nerds of the internet. Look at this. Holy cow. Now, if you clicked on this, you probably know what this is, but maybe you don't. It's pretty anonymous looking based on what it is. It just says Sutherland. So what is it? It's a Phono preamp. It's a big Phono preamp. It's an expensive Phono preamp. I did a lot of reviews of preamps that were sub $200. One that went all the way up to $400. This one, the retail price is $2,200. Don't tell my wife. I bought this used, so I didn't pay that much, but it was still not cheap, as one might imagine. Let's look at the backside, because this is a pretty unique Phono preamp. Boom. Is this in focus? I think so. So, the thing you might immediately realize is that the input and output is nowhere close to each other. Here it says out, and here it says out, and then here is in, and here is in. Why is that? It's weird. Anyone got a guess? No? No one's gonna try to fix the... well, because this is dual mono, and you'll see more when I take this cover off. You have your single ground, which is nice. You don't need two grounds. The other thing you might notice is, where do you plug it in? There's no place to plug in. It's not passive. Obviously, it's a preamp, so we'll also see where that is when we get to the under the cover portion. And so how do you get under the cover? Well, you have four... oh, that's not in focus at all, is it? There, that's better focused. You have four of these, which I only have one in for the sake of my sanity and time. And it's just, you unscrew them. Then you lose it. And then you take the cover off. And then this is where the magic happens, as they used to say on MTV Cribs. So if you lived in a Phono preamp, this would be a nice one to live in, because, well, that doesn't work, does it?
2,000 years later.
All right. Now we can see all of the magic. And as you can see, there's two completely separate boards in here. So it's basically two Phono preamps, two mono preamps in one chassis. You have all the filtering, and then you have, here's your settings for gain and loading. And then you might still be looking at this like, hey, where do you plug this in? I still don't get it. Well, that's right down here. These little guys here. You have two different power sources that you have to plug in. Which this is probably my least favorite thing. Not just because it's inconvenient, because you have to take this top panel off to get to that, but there's no strain relief at all. Let me grab the... So what you get, other than my big hairy arm in your face, but you get that for free, you're welcome, because you get two of these a million years later. You get two of these, and this looks like, you know, something you would plug your laptop into, which I think is essentially what it is. And it goes back here, and it just plugs into that. But as you can see, there's nothing that really keeps this, like, if you're an idiot like me, I'm not saying you are an idiot, but there's a possibility that you're an idiot, and you forget to unplug something, and you're like, oh, I'm going to take this out and move it somewhere. You leave this plugged in, and you yank on it, you're like, you could theoretically bust at the best you could bust one of these solder joints. At the worst, you could break this board, and then you'd really be upset. Um, so I don't think that's great. I would have loved this to maybe come in, even if this metal piece here extended down, and then there's a little slit for this to sit in and kind of give it a little bit of strain relief. That would be cool. But that is my only complaint about it. I mean, obviously having the can't do that without readjusting the camera. The having the these guys so spaced far apart, that's going to limit the amount of RCA cables you could use, which isn't necessarily a problem for me, but it might be for somebody else. That might be someone else's thing that they hate about it. So there's a newer version. This is the original version. They've, at some point in the past couple of years, put out a new version. And so if you're out there looking to buy one of these used and you're wondering what the difference is, near as I can tell, based on what I've read, and with Ron Sutherland, who's a really nice guy. I actually I had a phone conversation with him many years ago when I was going to buy a Sutherland PH3D Phono Preamp, which this is more expensive than. And that one was battery operated. This one you obviously plug in, as we've discussed. And he called me while he was walking the dog, and he was a really nice guy. So back to what I was saying. The only difference between this and the Mark II version, which is the new version, is that these boards on this version are essentially the same. Like you can see even here, like the only difference is where they solder this LED in, because there's a different there's LEDs for both sides, and then this resistor which feeds into that LED. So you can see there that there's a blank spot for that. So you could put it on either side. So this was just generically the same thing, depending on where they soldered that. On the new version, this actually is a left and a right side. Right, left. And the reason for that, near as I can tell, based on my own research, is that the thing that people expect in their heads is that, okay, so this is going to be in, or out and out, and in, or out and out, not out in, out in. So when you're hooking this up, that's something that you could easily miss. Like, oh, I actually did it. When I set this up, I inverted the out and the in. And evidently, people were doing that all the time and calling Sutherland and saying, hey, one of my sides of my 2020, which is what this, I guess I never even said what it's called. It's called the 2020, isn't functioning. And basically, that was the problem. So, in their genius way of fixing it, they just did what more people expected, and had them, I would assume that it's, I don't know, I don't know what I want to assume without looking at it, but these are the same, and then these are the same versus this and this being the same. This is, I don't know, rambling about stupidity. So, near as I can tell, that's the only difference. I do not believe that they made any changes to the actual circuitry. It's the same preamp, just slightly less confusing for dummies like me. I didn't have to call Sutherland. I just figured that out by looking at it, because I'm not entirely stupid. So, I guess we're still talking about features here. Let me adjust the camera. Maybe we can we? One second. Let me adjust the camera. All right, we are back with camera adjustments. So, like I said, your gain and your loading options, you have gain options of 64, 58, 52, 46, 40. And then loading options, you have, your 47K for moving magnet, and then you have 1K, 475K, 200, not K, 1K, 475 ohm, 200 ohm, 100 ohm. And you have it repeated on both sides, so it's really easy to figure out. I'm using this with my VPI Scout, the original one, not the new cooler version. Using a Denon DL-301MKII. And so I've set this to the highest gain setting because that's a pretty low output moving coil cartridge, and it requires over 100 ohms of loading. So I tried 200 and 475K, and my preference was to the 200. It seemed to have a little bit more excitement and life to it. And it sounds fantastic. It really sounds amazing. It's completely balanced. It is completely. It's super silent. It is the least noisy Phono preamp that I've ever had. All right, so here's a little inside baseball for you and my filming of this stuff. I am in the basement of my home, and sometimes when someone is upstairs, my wife or my children, they run water, you could hear it rushing. There, you could also hear them clomping around up there. So ignore any of that. I could pretend like it doesn't happen, but it really throws me off when it happens. Where was I? Oh, I think so. Yeah, it's super silent compared to I think anything that I've ever had. And one of the things that I always have an issue with when people are like, this is the best sounding whatever. Like, well, what have you compared it to? So here's some other than the myriad of. Well, let's go through them. So the Manny, the XPS1 from Emotiva. I had Gen 1 and I had Gen 2. Gen 2, there's a review of. You can go watch that. The Project, what is it called? The Tube Box S. I've had the Parasound Z. All right. Well, my camera battery died, so now I'm back. And I believe I was talking about all of the Phono preamps I've loved before. Let me try to remember. So I had the ones that I've reviewed, which would be the Manny, the Bugle 2, the XPS1, Gen 2. I've also owned the Gen 1 a long time ago. The Project 2 Box S, the Parasound. Well, this begins the videos or the preamps I didn't have to make videos of. The Project, no, not Project, Parasound Z Phono USB, which I got for the extra functionality, not necessarily the USB functionality, but it had more options for moving coil. What else? The Ray Samuels Nighthawk, which was a battery operated preamp. I had the Rogue Triton. I had a Sutherland PH3D, which I all let go of for some reasons. So when I talk about something like, oh, this is the best I've ever heard, that's the context in which I've ever heard. And so this is by far the best phono preamp I have ever heard. There's plenty of phono preamps that are more expensive than this that I've never heard. So I can't say that this is the best phono preamp ever. I can only state that it's the best one that I've ever heard. It's the quietness is amazing. The imaging is amazing. I actually hear front to back depth, not just side to side depth in the imaging that I've never heard out of my stuff in the past. And you can see there's not a whole lot going on here in terms of the circuit. You got, 3 op amps and some resistors. That's probably for your loading, and a couple capacitors. And then you have down there is all of um, the power stage from, I guess it's smoothing out the wall wart power supply. So you don't have a whole lot of stuff, but it sounds amazing. And you have 2 sides of it doing the exact same thing. Now, $2,200 is a lot of money to spend on something like this. And so I can understand people saying, hey, that's a lot of money. I guess someone else is going to say, hey, you have a moving magnet system available to you. Did you try it on that? And the answer to that is no. The reason being, well, first off, my son's room is a disgusting mess, and I don't want to go in there. It gives me anxiety. And then also, I don't think any sane person would spend $2,200 on a Phono preamp in a system that is less than $1,000. But I'm crazy enough to try it if someone actually cares. I can't imagine that anyone would really want to know, other than for painful curiosity, which might be why I end up doing it as well. Maybe one day when he cleans his room, I'll take this up there and plug it in. But it is pretty incredible. One of the other incredible things that I find is that one of the things I really hate about records is surface noise, and I've found that cleaning records does not really remove significant amounts of surface noise, if at all. Also, new records are, I guess, prone to have that surface noise less than older records, but they're not impervious to having surface noise entirely, so it can be frustrating. And for some reason, the magic of this thing is that it somehow makes the surface noise bearable. It doesn't take it away, it just makes it less distracting. And I'm not sure how it does that. I think maybe it's that capacitor right there that makes it sound better with surface noise. I'm just completely making that up in case you couldn't tell, but I don't know. I don't have a lot of answers for that. All I know is what I hear. And if you have one of these, let me know. And let me know how you think it fares with surface noise. Also, if you've ever tried it with a moving magnet cartridge, let me know that too. Now, this isn't the top of the line Sutherland preamp. There is, I think, 1 or 2 higher than this, and now there's a couple lower than this one. But it sounds fantastic. I kind of bought it just to try it and then move away from it, but it sounds so good. I don't think I can get rid of it. I kind of didn't want to hold on to it. We'll see if I can justify this long term. I don't think I will, but it sounds great. Yeah, check it out. It's pretty great. Thank you.